Howdy ho and welcome to Rauta's Challenging the Classics. Today's album is one of the most known, most talked about, most argued album in black metal history. It's called Enthrone Darkness Triumphant by Norwegian black metal band Dimmu Borgir. Now, the whole band is in fact quite controversial, or at least debated, because already back in the 90s when Dimmu Borgir started to get this wind under its wings and started getting more attention, more fame, more success and all that stuff, well, people started to debate whether or not this kind of a band would be called a true black metal band. I mean, you probably remember the discussion whether or not a band was true or not. True black metal versus untrue. Were they too much posers or just, true to their roots or ideologies or whatever. And also controversial because people were kind of like debating like if you're truly commercial with your music and all that stuff, if you're successful enough, like can you be black metal anymore and all that stuff. Also musically, how much synths and melodies and blah 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 you can add to your music and still be called black metal. Now that's a whole different topic, talk about Dimmu Borgir as a whole band. Kudos to them for, being successful with their music and all, but we're here to just talk about this album. And when I say we, I'm expecting some sort of commentary from you, dear audience, once you've seen the video and my opinion about it. Now, this album takes me actually very much to late 90s, when I was kind of like picking fast new bands here and there, getting CDs and all that stuff. I mean, I found my first black metal bands around, I would say, 1994. And, there were lots of Norwegian and Swedish bands, obviously. I mean, I pretty much went to the basic band with, bands such as Bathory, Immortal, Burzum, etc. And Dimmu Borgir came to my attention, I would say, roughly around 1996. Might have been 1997. I mean, who knows anymore at this point, almost like 25 years later. Now, I remember liking that album quite a bit back in the days. And back then I wasn't maybe so much into the raw end of black metal. Or maybe my scope regarding the whole genre was, in a way, more welcoming. Like when, kids are just consuming lots and lots of music and you don't necessarily choose so much between which is better and which is not. You're just open to all kind of suggestions and listening to all that stuff and figuring out which is actually good in your opinion and all that stuff. Now, this is also an album that seems to divide people in many ways. Some people say it's way too cheesy, way too symphonic and all that stuff. And some people love it for that sake. I mean, it's not raw, it's easy to approach, it's very big sounding, and it's also something that is what we could call mainstream version of black metal. I mean, the whole Dimmu Borgir case would be fairly said it's like the black metal equivalent to Metallica or Iron Maiden. I mean, their sound is so mainstream and they're so big orchestrated thing that it's beyond your normal 4 or 5 man black metal band. Now that can be a good thing, that can be a bad thing, or we can choose to not care about that fact at all. What matters though is that the band is big and everybody is going to have an opinion about it in case they are into black metal in the first place. Now, be it as it may, let's go back in time to 1997 when the album was out. So Dimmu Borgir, back in the days, remember, it was a very, very active band. I mean, it started in 1993, soon followed by 3 demos, EP, all these in 1994. Very quick pace. And then already, 1995, you have first album, 1996, second album, 1997, third album. And there was EP, there was live, all that stuff. The point here is the band was pushing stuff out in a very, very quick pace, but also taking big leaps in terms of progress, evolving as a band. And I know, from the past that people have been talking about these different releases in various ways, like, hey, my favorite is For Royalty, my favorite is Stormblast, and my favorite is Enthrone, and then it goes different directions. I mean, after Spiritual Black Dimensions, which I guess was kind of like those dividing album in so many ways. This pace with, albums started a little bit slowed down. Not much. I mean, you have albums coming out every 2 years until 2007 when, it started to slow down, and then suddenly we have 8 years. Now, obviously, throughout these years, the band kind of got a lot bigger. They were doing lots of festivals, lots of gigs, and they were not on the same level anymore than where they started in the 1990s. But, like I said, we're here to talk about Enthrone Darkness Triumphant mostly, not about the whole band. Now, I remember, among so many other people, being, listening to Morning Palace, seeing the music video, and it sounded very, very bombastic, very majestic, and all sounding so big and orchestrated. Kind of a catchy riffs and lots of synths, lots of them. And also the kind of a music that is very easy to get into, easy to get to appeal, the music. And at the same time, you have these guys with their corpse paints and, leather and spikes and all that stuff. So it's all there, but kind of a more, one would say, mainstream version. Or should we say it's more ear-friendly than so many other bands doing more raw stuff. Not so melodic, not so big sounding and all that stuff. Now, one of the reasons I guess should be given the credit is that the label Nuclear Blast was, in order to support them, definitely helping them to become big and all that stuff. Definitely helping to do the promotion and put the band on the map way more than before that. But that alone doesn't actually explain why the album is so much liked and why it is so big album that it's definitely one of those albums that you could compare in black metal sense to some Iron Maiden classics or whatever. Now, in my opinion, the album is at the same time quite successful and really, really well done, and it's kind of a cheesy. Now, to be honest, I had this as a beautiful digipack copy. I think it was digipack anyway, with this kind of a circular saw blade kind of a design CD. It looked really beautiful, and I remember liking this album quite a bit. But that liking kind of wore off quite quickly, merely in a couple of years or so. I don't even remember when I sold it, probably traded it away to some other CD back in the days, and basically never looked back. Until now, 2021, when I decided it's time to do this, challenging the classic series, which started with Dissection, and I decided to give this another listen. So maybe almost like 25 years later, not exactly 25 years, but 23, something like that. And I was like figuring out, like, did I make a mistake back in the days? Did I just do foolish thing to just trading it away? Because, I mean, isn't it supposed to be this really good album? I mean, for example, here in Metal Archives, you don't see necessarily so many bands with 25 reviews. Commonly, merely see only a few reviews, even with the more popular ones. But this is one album, one of them, that is, that actually has so many opinions. Everybody wants to put their mind on the map to say, like, hey, I have also listened to this album and I like it, or I don't like it, whatever. Maybe I'm just showing the crew here right now. Now, I don't know why this came to me, actually, why did it come to my mind, but I was giving this a few listens, obviously, before doing this video, to kind of like refresh my mind about it, and to figure out like what's going on, like how does this album sound nowadays. Now, first of all, this album runs for 51 minutes, it's quite lengthy in that sense, but then again, it's also one of those albums which is very symphonic, has a lot of elements, layers, symphonic parts with lots of keyboards, lots of them, guitars, drums, everything is right there. It's like equivalent to what, whatever Nightwish could be doing nowadays, or have actually been doing. There's lots of layers, lots of things going on. It doesn't really compare to your average black metal album in so many ways. And that is both the curse and the blessing in this case. Like, if you would compare these to other Norwegian bands doing roughly the same genre, that is very symphonic, very keyboard driven music, where guitars also play an important part, but I would say keyboard driven. Now, Emperor would come to my mind, especially this era, 1997 or 1996, 1997, roughly, give or take. The point here is some of these bands were definitely taking step into the more kind of a classical music inspired. I don't know if they were actually inspired by that, but you kind of get the feeling like, okay, now this is big orchestrated music rather than some person dude playing the basement, you know, and all that stuff. So this was a kind of a big band equivalent to black metal rather than this one or two men operated bands doing small time things. And I guess that's one thing why this band managed to piss off people. They were becoming big where others were struggling with their music. But it also shows that these guys were really, really ambitious already during this time. Now there's a lot of stuff put here on this album, and can't really say none of the tracks are weak. By no means, they're not even mediocre. They're all at least decent. But my problem lies with the album in the fact that everything sounds so goddamn cheesy nowadays. Now, when I was giving this album a listen, I couldn't find like being allergic or annoyed by any of these ideas here. But I really didn't get that full chemistry going on. It's much like you date a person who you think is funny, is smart, looks nice and all that stuff, but somehow you don't really feel the click. Maybe you go to bed and you're like, it's all good, man, but I don't feel the love. I don't see the wedding party coming. And that's what's happening with me, this album. You know, when I was listening to these songs, like, back on back, you know, multiple times, and I was like, yeah, I get it. What makes this album so much like lots of those keyboards, lots of happening, you know, it sounds big. The production is, wow, it's big. Scream vocals, not too raw, but they still have the edge, so to say. And I don't know, there's nothing wrong with the guitar riffs either, even though, in my opinion, they're way too much on the background versus what happens on the keyboard department. But still, everything seems like it's like almost gonna like do this wow element for you. But I don't get that wow. I don't get that fireworks thing happening. I don't get, you know, wetting my pants for the sheer joy of listening to this one. It's more like, yeah, I mean, it's a nice album and all that stuff, but I wouldn't buy it again. So for me, this is a kind of an example of album where you go really big, you do everything kind of right, but still something is missing. Now, what kind of emphasizes the whole deal here, in my opinion, is that Morning Palace, the opening track, the hit song of the album, is in fact probably the best song of the album. I mean, it already has all the elements the album has to offer, and since that, I wouldn't say it's repeating the same, but it's trying to get that same hit song feeling without getting it. And I'm not even saying that Morning Palace is like the best symphonic black metal song of all time. It's definitely among the best, I guess, in a way. But it's not that mind-blowing, you know? It's not Enter Sandman, if you will. I'm not saying Enter Sandman is the best thrash metal band, or album, or song, whatever, ever. The thing here is, everything is here professionally made. Everything here is to have their place, and everything here is to kind of give you the feeling like now you're listening to something big, something meaningful, something that's gonna stand the test of time. But for me, it kind of sounds way too cheesy, as if you had this creamy cake where there's too much cream and you can't really finish the piece. And while I totally understand in a certain ways that because of all these big sounding, nicely done songs, everything is ready to do that, it also sounds like, okay, this was big in the 90s, but this doesn't really have something that I could relate today. So now that I was listening back, once again, listening to this album, I didn't get that feeling of nostalgia, you know, like the warm feeling when you have when you listen to something that takes you back in your teenage years or childhood because of those songs. Even if the songs are not that good, but you get that warm feeling, almost like guilt feeling for liking something that's not that great. I didn't get that with this one. It's more like, hey, you're someone I used to know. I mean, there's a reason why I used to, not hanging around anymore. So once again, this is kind of a good album, but I still don't feel the full love for it. The kind of I should have in order to put this in my shelf. And now some people are asking, like, if this isn't the best Dimmu Borgir album, what the hell would it be? Because so many people like this one the most, and that's it. Which is kind of a sad case for the band. Now, I seem to be this weird guy who likes Ionian the most. And that is still something that really clicks with me. And it's kind of weird because I guess many people think that the best before date for Dimmu Borgir was in the 90s. And I'm like, no, the best Dimmu Borgir is nowadays Dimmu Borgir. But that's what it is with bands. Different opinions for different folks, different strokes, all that stuff. Now, if you haven't been listening to Enthrone Darkness Triumphant for many years like I had, definitely do that. It's kind of nice to get the feeling that what was going on back in the late 90s. But prepare for impact. You might not feel that wow moment right there. You might even hate it. But it's definitely worth listening to. There's something really nice with the album, even though it fully didn't click with me this time either. So once again, there's a reason why I don't have it on CD anymore. Now, lots of rambling about this album, but I think it has its place written in stars. It's definitely one of those classic albums which, in my opinion, deserve the spot. But is it worth all the praise? I think not. So, in terms of these scores, if I had to give this a score, I would say it's solid 75% for me. Good, but not great. This is my verdict. What are your opinions about this album? Great or not so great? Let me know, and feel free to comment other ways what kind of thoughts this album invokes in you. Take care and see you soon with more Challenging the Classics coming your way.